はい。
お見合いだったの？
行ったことないか。
じゃあすごくない？お見合いで最後まで愛し合うってさ、今時おばあちゃんたちみたいにずっと続くのって珍しいよ。
そんな愛し合うって、今の感じとは違うわよ。私らの時代は結婚は戦後を生き抜くための手段だったから。
ああ、そっか。
それにおじいちゃん、他に好きな人がいたから。
え？
私に出会う前からおじいちゃんその人好きだったの。
どういうこと？
とてもいいとこのお嬢さんだったみたい。だから向こうの親御さんに結婚大反対されたんですって。それでもおじいちゃんずっと好きだったんだよね。おじいちゃん時々その人と旅行に行ったりして。
このこと誰か知ってるの？
いいや、誰にも話したことない。よその人におじいちゃんのこと勘違いしてもらいたくなかったから。
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, film culture critic, and journalist Carolyn Hines, and this is one of my interviews for the 2025 Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. And today I am very happy to be joined by writer, director, actress, and executive producer Mayumi Yoshida to discuss her feature film directorial debut, Akashi, which is, I think, a beautiful film about love and about secrets and memories, and I think art and inspiration, and so many things, the drama of family life. And I think also a bit about the disconnect that happens with us when we immigrate from our home countries to another country. And we're going to really get into it. But first of all, thank you so much, Mayumi, for joining me. Yay.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. Like, I mean, we were talking a bit before we began recording, but like, I've known you for a few years now. But I remember when we were first talking about Akashi, and you were talking about being nervous to film in Japan, and like looking for locations, because we were talking a bit in the time you were doing location scouting. And to see the final result, I'm so proud of you and so happy to see you in the film, because you started it and it was just like but but you've been a director for quite a while. You've done a lot of short films and you've done some commercial projects, but you're also an actress. Like, you're a very accomplished actress and award-winning performer. Talk to me a bit about just finding the balance as a not only just with Akashi, but just your career, like figuring out how you as a filmmaker wanted to transition from not only being behind the lens, but being in front of the lens as a performer.
Yeah, I don't know if I wanted to in the beginning for writing and directing. I think it kind of was an opportunity came, and it was almost from necessity that I had to do it, because I didn't know a Japanese writer or director at the time when I started, when I was trying to make my short film version of Akashi. And so I was always primarily an actor, and but it turns out that like that actually made me a better writer and director, because I have a lot of understanding, or like I shouldn't say understanding. I hope I have good understanding, but I had a lot more experience than I think other directors in the acting field. So in terms of balancing, it really is like it depends on the project. But with this one, I was able to balance all that because I was very aware that it's going to be a lot. And so picking collaborators was like, that was one of the things that I would talk in interviews, or even when I'm like, yeah, finding people about how they can support me and how we can work together to collaborate to make sure that we're all on the same page, where the director is wearing so many hats, and that they can give me great input as I'm going through this. So yeah, I think you can only manage it when you have a good supporting team.
And in speaking about your supporting team, like this film was co-produced with with your production studios, Masubi Arts. And one of the people involved with this film is Natasha Mataya, and his film Mongrels was produced also by Musubi Art. So when I looked in the credits and I saw Nat's name, I'm like, of course, not because he's like one of your collaborators as a producer, but he was editor for the film. And I think it's amazing that you, at this point in your career, have your own production studio as well. And, like you're able to help make these stories, not only for bring films like Akashi to life through this production studio, but helping others like bring their own stories to life. So talk about the importance of having that collaboration with people who do have the experience of working with you as a producer on this film, say versus bringing in somebody that you've never worked with before, but having someone like Natch involved with the production from the aspect of it.
I think Natch and I, we have a company together called Musubi Arts, and it's important to us that we tell stories and support storytellers who want to tell it their own way, and kind of championing that, because I think systemically we haven't been able to have that sort of been able to have that agency and hold that space, and us being the representation of what we want to represent. So I feel like in my career, I've been a lot of cases the supporter as a crew member, whether it's a cultural consultant or dialect coaching, or even as an actor, you're lending your voice, you as a tool to somebody else's vision. So I sort of wanted to give that sort of agency to the creator, so that yeah, it's in control, like you, as not in a bad way, like you're not like we're giving that power to the creator, and that's what Natch gave me for my for Akashi, and also like with Jerome, like his voice was so important. So which, and for the stuff that we have in development too, I think that's really important to make sure that we protect the artists' voices as much as possible. And I think Natch is just such a great producer who is able to balance, being real about how to make these things happen, like very difficult productions happen, but also protecting the director's vision and finding the best way possible to make any project come to fruition. So yeah, I'm very grateful that I get to work with Natch on artist level, and also at like that producer's level as well.
And I understand what you mean about control, because the thing about being an independent filmmaker and having your own production company does give you a level of control, especially that is important. I think when you're telling stories about cultures, a specific non-North American, non-white cultures and practices and beliefs, and like that's important, because the thing is with like the big studio films, everyone is like, you want to like, I want to work with the big studio and everything, and that has its benefits, if you get mass marketing, mass promotion, you get the money. But the thing is something that you do have to sacrifice with that is control to up to a certain level, because the studios they have their own agendas, they'll have their own particular messaging. But when you have an independent film like this, where you want to make a story about a family, a story about a woman having to question where she is at her life, and the relationships and her career and her art and all of these things, you want to make sure that you may only focus on that there is no other agenda that can come in and dilute that. And that's what I love about filmmakers and production studios like Musubi Arts and so many other production studios and people that I interview, where they're like, I want to make the story that I want to tell, because it, like, this is something I was talking to someone on the street, like sometimes a story it may be very specific, but that can make it universally relatable, because there's some things that are, grief is a relatable emotion, like, I mean, the immigrant story is a universal story.
Yeah, shout out to Experimental Forest too, Tyler Hagen and Kathleen Hepburn, who runs that company, and they've been doing this a little longer than our company, and which is why I wanted to work with Tyler, because with what he did with The Body Remembers and Never Say Never Still, like all of the works, and recently with Meadowlarks and Seagrass, and so many.
They did Seagrass.
To the Branches brand, like so many beautiful films that that you can clearly see the artistic vision and their voice being protected. I think like we really respect and admire what they do. So they've been such a great mentor to us from the beginning of like Akashi's development. and it's been amazing to work together. And I think Natch and like Tyler, they're literally wrapping up a production like today for a different film, and like there's so many great energies in Vancouver productions where we really try to foster that kind of like nurturing energy and protecting artistic voices. So I hope we can keep doing that.
I
And
hope you guys get to, and I'm sure you will continue, because Akashi with its premiere at the Vancouver International Film Festival has been getting a lot of attention. It's going to be showing at Real Asian here, and even Mongrels itself got I think a fair amount of critical acclaim.
yeah,
Like I interviewed Jerome and
yes.
Nash for it, and like it got to go to Jeonju International Film Festival as well this year. So like the films and Seagrass, and even if like Seagrass is for a different studio, but Vancouver films and the films that you guys are making are films that are being seen around the world. Like I'm
Rice
so
Boy
glad.
Sleeps.
Pardon?
Rice Boy Sleeps.
Rice Boy Sleeps. Like and funny enough, I pat myself on the back. I've interviewed all the filmmakers for these films that we're naming, right? So like, and that's why I'm always so happy to be able to talk to people like you, because I'm always trying to tell people Canadian filmmakers and filmmakers of color are making films about Canadian people, the Canadian experience, but it's just more than just a stopgap and a production stage for Hollywood films. You know, like Canada is making these amazing independent films, and these are stories that are on the level of I would say all Canadian Hollywood films, because again, a lot of Hollywood films are actually made here, not only in Toronto, but in Vancouver, BC, all across the country, right?
Right.
Yeah, and in talking about that now, and like and about the production and everything, talk about producing Akashi and like just the process of doing the scouting locations, because you were born in Japan and you've done a few like Japanese productions and stuff. But what was it like for you seeing Japan through the eyes of a filmmaker doing scouting locations? You know, because like you'll be like, oh, this is an amazing set. You'll be like, this is an amazing location, but you're like, it's impractical. It's not going to work for what we want to do.
It's definitely a different shooting style, as well as just the whole system is very different. What happens on set is similar. Obviously, we the way we interact with the actors. Well, I guess actually, I don't know if it is similar. I shouldn't generalize. I think every set is always, it's very unique, but for our production specifically, we had a lot of Canadians come to Japan to shoot together. So with the Japanese crew there, so we were very mindful that like maybe we do it in the North American style, and then work with the local folks who can also kind of educate us their way of going about with like shooting in these locations. And we had like a local service production that came in who, hooked us up with all these vendors and amazing crew. So, and it helps that I'm bilingual. So we didn't need to have like a translator or an interpreter in between, so that the communications was obviously a lot faster, because I've been on productions where you are primarily like English speaking North American, and the key positions are also that. So like there's a lot of translating. You need a lot of patience to do that kind of production. Not saying that you didn't need that for our production. We still had like a fair amount of patience for every department to understand each other.
Yeah.
But I think again, like picking the right collaborators is so important. Like we were very mindful that we're going into Japan as a guest to do our production, and we wanted people who were also very aware of that mindset of like, we have to be adaptable. We can't bulldoze over how we do it. Like we want to be respectful in the way we operate and have fun. And yeah, our crew, I think, we were a small, mighty crew, but we had such a great time. I had such a great time. And shooting in Vancouver as well was awesome. But when we got to like keep a lot of the crew from Japan to Vancouver, so it just felt so special to shoot in my home country. And in terms of like the logistics, obviously homes are smaller, the street is narrower, like trucks are tiny. There's a lot of things. But all in all, we always figure things out. That's like in every film set, you will always have those kind of, learning curves, whether it's within Canada or in the States. That's just we're so used to that kind of adjusting to new environments.
Yeah.
So it's just more of like finding the people who has like the good energy and great mindset. And I think I was so blessed with that with our casting crew.
And I'm sure it helped with like having to learn to adapt and adjust, actually kind of maybe helps with the creativity of like the filming process, like figuring out camera angles, like how you want to bring the camera maybe from a different angle, because this angle of like the building doesn't work and the street is a bit more narrow, so the limitations of like the camera is different. So like you'll be like, you know what, this shot actually looks better in this angle because you're confined. And for instance, like I watch a lot of Japanese films and also South Korean films. And the thing with like films in these kind of countries is the locations are smaller because yes, the physical space is smaller. But I always find like it really does lend to some things like for a film like this, to the intimacy of the scenes, like
Right.
Like inside the house is small and it's more wood, but like it lends more to an intimacy. The family has to sit closer because like there's limited space. Like everyone is conversing and they are super close. They have to be close to each other. So again, limited space with camera crew and everything, but that lends to the intimacy. So talk a bit about that, and like saying, you know what, like I love this intimacy because it brings out something that perhaps you weren't anticipating as you were writing it, but as you're going through the process of filming the feature versus the short, you're like, this actually makes the story feels more intimate and look more visually intimate.
I think, the location was so important, obviously, because like the house was the most important, I think, locations. And we tried to lock it like way ahead of our schedule. I'm pretty sure the first time we location scouted both of those homes was like 6 months ahead of our shoot. And but actually because we did that, when we did our second location scale with the DP, which was maybe like 3 months before the shoot, we were able to like scan the entire space. So then when I knew that heading into production, I'll be busy as an actor and writer and a director. So we shot listed like 3 months before the shoot. And by having that location locked already, we had such a great playground that like a very accurate shot list that kind of reflects the space and understanding, okay, so if this is the kind of shot we want in this kind of space, maybe this is the lens we need. And like we were able to kind of prep all that beforehand, which really, really helped. And because of the budget too, we didn't have a lot of time to shoot as well. So considering that as well, like we were able to pick a house that I think originally we had grandma living in a separate home and then the family and then so but then because of schedule and budget, we're like, I think I started to consider, okay, what if it was a family that had, two generations living in one home, or perhaps three generations. And actually that kind of like, and I, at one point in my life, I lived in that kind of situation with my family, my grandparents and my family. So, and it really does create like an interesting dynamic in the house, and the history of the actual like building kind of like it, it weighs a little bit more. So how we hear, and I loved this part of sound design, but with Oscar, our sound designer, we talked about like how can the creak of the house, the sound of the creak of the house, how could it age and sound differently, like from like 10 years ago, Kana, when she's leaving to Japan, and then when she's like, 11 versus current in times when she's in her 30s. These like very specific sounds in the home, I feel like I love that we could kind of play with how that could age with Kana. And that's also what I love about the production design too. I loved how we really felt the history of the home. It's not just one generation living. It's like two, three generations living in this house. So there's some clutter. There's a lot of artifacts. There's so many photos. Like all those stuff I really loved kind of adding to the story. So, it's like happy surprises.
Yeah, and the sound, I didn't think about it, but as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense because the thing is when Kana's young, it's just the scenes that we see of her is mainly just her and the grandfather, or her or grandma, or her and the parents when she's young,
Yeah.
and the house is quieter, because there's not many people
Mm.
involved in the scenes. But in the present scenes, where is Kana, her mom, her brothers, her dad,
Her niece,
like
nephews. Yeah.
there's the nephew Daichi,
Yeah.
that when like there's so many more people, so there's more noise, it feels more lived in. The space
Yeah.
is, and like everyone hears each other's conversations, because you're just like a few steps away. So like there's no
Yeah.
real privacy. So these things really do come through in like the sound design, and also the set design, and the blocking where everyone is placed, because it really makes you realize how secrets are easier to keep when there's not many people around. But the more people there are in the more people there are in a family, it's harder to keep a secret. Like when mom loses her temper at the dining table, everyone knows what she's thinking because like everyone is there. She can't keep like there's no way for her to
Yeah.
say, there's no way for anyone to pretend to not know where she's coming from because everyone's hearing the conversation.
Mm.
Whereas like the scenes between Kana and her grandma, or Kana and grandpa, you can kind of keep the secrets because there's no really anyone around listening. And that's a big theme of the film,
Mm.
secrets, people not really being completely honest and open with each other. So talk about that, about having the
Mm.
space to keep secrets versus not having the space to keep secrets.
That's so interesting. I feel like I want to go back to like how you could hear everybody's conversation. That was a very conscious choice because we want to make sure the focus is there, but all that like surrounding sound is still prevalent
Yeah.
because it kind of gives this like energy of like, boom, you're in the space. And that's, I think, how you feel when you've been away from home for so long and you finally come back and then you forget how many people could fill in a room and how much noise builds up and you can hear all the conversations and you will pick up, the stuff that they're saying in the back and sadly we can't put a subtitle to all of them, but every Japanese person who's seen it told me how much they've loved that part, that all the things that everybody's saying in the background is so funny. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I didn't want to erase it. It's just so endearing to hear everybody's like where the camera is just entering their lives.
Mm.
And it's actually there's so much more beyond what's outside of the scene. And I loved that feeling for Kana. And to me, the important part also is that sort of chaos is also happening in the time of grieving.
Mhm.
Like they did just lose a very, very, very important person in the house, but somehow this family is like their ordinary life continues. And with Kana, who's been away for so long, it feels like she has everything is stopped for her.
Yeah.
So that's also that contrast of like this person who's been away from home gets the news. It feels so shocking. And so when she comes home, she forgets that like ordinary life keeps going for everybody else. And I think that's another like separation that she feels that am I feeling too much? Am I like being too melancholic and like trying to sort of navigate how she grieves in this home? And everybody grieves differently because when you see in the funeral, everybody gets very, very emotional. But then, the next day, the mom's like pretty harsh on Kana and like it's back to normal again. So I wanted to feel that the ordinariness of going back home. And in terms of secrets, and that sort of ordinariness that everybody has, it also is a mask of
Mhm.
what is perhaps going on. Like we don't know Kana's older sister's husband's deal. Like why isn't he there? You know?
Right? I was counting in my head. I'm like, is this someone missing? And I couldn't figure out who it was till the end. I'm like, wait a minute. There's a son here. Where's the daddy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we don't talk about it.
Right?
And the way the couple dynamic between the eldest son and his wife at the dinner table when things explode, the first thing that the brother does is like he apologizes to his like wife, which is really funny to me that he's like, sorry, babe, like
I was like, I thought that was funny too, because I'm like, how long have they been married? Because if they've been married maybe 1 or 2 years, and
Yeah,
this is probably the first time they've seen, like, she's seen like how the family really works at a dining table. Maybe he's like
I
apologize and say, I'm
right.
sorry, this is how we are. But if they've been married for like 10,
But
15 years,
or if they had been married, I mean, because they have a kid, like the wife probably knows this pattern too. So then the husband can easily go like, sorry, I know you called it, it's happening. Like,
right?
you said this would happen and it has happened. Like there's that kind of like history there too. It possibly. So and again, nobody really goes deeper in that. And then in the end, like they're like, oh, I'll deal with the kids, and they kind of run away to like
Yeah.
not deal with the real shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, that could be seen as something like a part of Japanese culture, where it's like we try to, like, there's like the term of saving face, like keep face, it's like we try to
Yeah.
keep everything civil and diplomatic and calm on the surface. Everyone wants to project this facade of perfection, and like, it's not only seen in the family table and the certain discussions, but even like the discussion that Kana has with her grandmother in the diner, which has a very retro feel to me. I saw it as like she's talking about she's revealing to her granddaughter that, yeah, your granddad never really loved me. He's been in love with this other woman his entire life. And I've had to come to terms with the fact that I know he doesn't love me romantically. He might love me as a companion. He might love me as his wife, but he doesn't love me as the person he's been in love with.
Mm.
And something she says broke my heart, because it's something that women of a particular generation, older generations were taught to do, where it's like, and because kind of asked, does anyone else know? She's like, no, because I didn't want anyone to think bad of him. And I was like, forget his reputation. What about your dignity and your pride and your heart and your emotions? She's like,
Yeah.
protecting him, because she has to make sure he looks good for everyone else. That everyone thinks that he's perfect, when really on truly on the surface, he's breaking her heart every day. Talk about that, because that's another aspect of
Yeah.
the idea of secrets,
And
and like protection.
totally. And that actually is what my grandma told me. And there's actually more to that, like, she's protecting his reputation, but really he's protecting her kids,
Mm.
because their father having a bad reputation, or like that being known in their society, would affect their kids.
Mm.
So she's protecting herself and her kids by also protecting her husband's reputation. So it's not only about sort of like, being the dedicated wife, it's also survival a little bit. Because especially in that generation, they didn't have like the ability to just, I mean, they could have, but it would have been much, much harder
Mm, yeah.
for them to be a single mother and get a job and, like, raise these two kids. So it was a realistic choice, I think, for my grandma to support him in this choice, but kind of like drawing the line to make sure that, like, okay, but I'm doing this really to protect the family, not, and that's why I think she was very nonchalant about telling me this. Like, I was kind of shocked that she told me that she dropped this big bomb on me. And I'm like, are you for real? Like, what? I'm like, I'm freaking out, like in the movie. But she was so calm and collected. And it was like she forgot to, like, you know, put her laundry in the dryer, that kind of information. It was like, oh yeah. Like, it was just so casual.
You're like, yeah, but you're like,
Yeah.
he's been in love with another woman. So what's for tea? I'm like, huh?
Yeah. Gosh, that was a good meal. Like, it wasn't a huge deal for her. Or at least that's how she delivered it. And
Yeah.
I thought that was so interesting, that, I mean, she's gone way beyond that. And I think that's the interesting part, that we're, I mean, there may have been a time where she may have been a lot more dramatic about it. I have no idea, because it's a long time that she's carried this with her. But I just thought it was extraordinary that she sort of like found an answer in herself and was very, like, content with that. And yeah, didn't have any other feelings in terms of like, oh, but I should be loved. And, she's like, no, but that's that.
Yeah, she's like, there's nothing. But she's like, what else can I do? Like,
Yeah,
am I gonna divorce him and and if I divorce him, what happens? Like in the society at this point in time, like she would have been almost
exactly.
not an outcast, but she would have been faced with more struggles, being a single mother and then having the stigma of being divorced. So it's like the women, and this is again, the film is set in Japan, but this is something that was prevalent across the world at a very particular time before, not even before, well, into the 20th century, even though, because there's still stigma of women who are divorced, especially if they divorce from men that are perceived and seen by society as being like the perfect husband. Like, why would you divorce him? And then there'll be people that would say, so what if he doesn't love you romantically? He's a good provider, he's a good husband, like, so like I could see, and I thought about that. I was like, well, she would have been like, I have to make do with the best that I have. But
Totally. And I kind of like with my film, the reason why we also see um Kana's parents get into this argument is also because I wanted to show the contrast of how each generation's like shape of love in a marriage has shifted. My mother character, like Seiko, she's she is still sort of a quote unquote like housewife, but she has her own opinions and she will stand up for herself and she will call her husband out. And that's not maybe something that my grandmother's generation would have done as much. And so it has evolved, but it's not fully evolved. And then in Kana's generation, it's actually like the man telling her that like, why aren't you doing what you want to do? Which is not a representation of everything about our generation, but the power dynamic is shifting, and I sort of and even like the value of how we value marriage and the shape of love is like kind of shifting. Like I said, with like Tomomi, which is this older sister's um marriage, like we don't fully know the big picture. Why isn't he there? He could just be busy at work, that he's like, I'm sorry, I can't be there, which is very possible. But it's not a shock to us to see just a mother and a son. We're not like, oh my God, what happened? Where's the father? We're not obsessed about that. We're just like, yeah, okay,
I really miss him.
which is fair. But I think I wanted that sort of different types of shapes of love and marriage that has evolved, and we kind of see some things stay the same, some things have changed. It's a kind of a question to how we perceive our current times and what do we choose.
It is, and in talking about like love and stuff, and a hero, who's played by
Ryo Tajima, yeah.
he's interesting because like the reason he doesn't go with her to Canada, not gonna spoil too much, people, but the reason he doesn't go to Canada, he talks about his father getting a heart attack, and then he talks about just like slowly losing touch with her. And me having had that experience of losing touch with people after I moved here to Canada, it was very relatable to me. Like, like, and it's like for him and his situation is romantic, like he and Kana were dating, and like that was on a romantic intention, and they lost that contact. But I related a lot to that because something that again a lot of people don't realize, that when you immigrate, when you move away, you do lose contact with people, and it just happens. It's like sometimes you do put in effort, but it just kind of like whittles away, and that's kind of like how relationships are. That's how life is. Like we lose contact with people, but then she comes back, and like they're able to not pick up where things are perfectly, but there you can see there's still like there's not just the chemistry of romance there, but then there's like people who were friends there, like they were friends, and like they had a connection and they believed in each other. And then like she's like nervous to be before, like she ducks down behind like the shelf in the supermarket.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I see my ex. But it's also, I kind of saw him as like almost like a representation of her grandmother. If her grandmother was there at that point in time and she hadn't died, he was telling her what her grandmother would have told her. Like don't let love be the thing that holds you back, because I've been in that situation. I don't want you to get stuck in this.
Right.
So talk to me about Hiro, and I kind of see him as like, almost like the grandmother in that sense, where he was like, I'm not gonna hold you back, and I don't want to lose touch with you, but that's how life is, like she lost touch with her grandmother for the same space,
Yeah.
the same 10 years as she lost touch with Hiro.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, but I think and this is maybe specific to folks who've left their home to pursue something outside of their country, but time stops from what the moment you left. And but then again, it moves on their end. And it is we on our end it moves on too, but we're at a different landscape. So that landscape to us has stopped. And um I think it's so incredibly hard to sustain that because and something that I personally experienced was the person who I was wanting to come to Canada back in the days and pursuing my career in Japan, feeling like, oh, I don't know if I like staying here. I need to go somewhere. And then coming here, I think 3 or 4 years, I think the first 3 or 4 years, I really struggled going back and forth between Japan and Canada because I felt like I was pulled into different directions in terms of my identity. Like if I'm going back to Japan, kind of like with the people at the karaoke bar, they're like expecting her to be something
Yes.
and not really seeing her as she is, possibly because it's been so long. But then on the opposite end, if she was keeping that, she probably has moved on in a way in a different country. But there's a part of them maybe expecting that, like, but you should be the same. You've changed. Is another part of this like dilemma of like keeping who you were, but also accepting that you've changed.
Hmm.
And I sort of wanted to show that with Hiro and Kana's relationship that time heals, but it also like it passage of time is also sometimes it separates people. And it's kind of a natural thing that it's just how if we grow, sometimes we grow out of people, and it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that that person wasn't, that wasn't good for you. It's just that you're growing, and maybe they might come together again. And which is why I kind of want to give that hope with the Machu Picchu. But in that time in life, again, spoiler, Hiro and Kana it's still not the right timing for both of them. And you can't if we try to sort of like bend if either of them tries to bend over to make it work, down the road it's going to crack again. And I think that's what Hiro knew at the time when, the moving opportunity was there. So, it's so but that's this human relationship. It's so complicated, and it's a miracle if anything lands in the right timing. But to even know that, you have to be open and you have to sort of like commit yourselves into opportunities, and not be scared of like saving yourself, because actually the more you save yourself, you miss those opportunities. So that
Yeah.
was like sort of the big theme for Hiro and Kana.
Yeah, I know you have another interview soon, so I'll begin to wrap up. So I have two more questions for you. So, in
Yeah.
the thing about the stopping of the time, I do relate again to that because, and it is so surreal, but I've never really thought about it in the way you put it. But it is, yeah, when you do move away, and it's not when you move away for a few weeks, but you're moving away from your homeland for years, possibly decades. You do kind of, the time does stop in the way that you don't actually see how things progress. You don't see how things build. You don't see how time changes. You don't see how a building might be, a new building goes up while an old one goes down. You don't see
Yeah.
people, even with social media, even with video cameras and recording, everyone posting, you're not seeing it in real time. And then when you go back, you realize, oh wait, this building that I'm like, you were like, was this building always here, or is this something new?
I felt that all the time. Every time I go back home, there's a new building, and I'm like, oh, great, okay, great. That's another.
right. And so like your landmarks change, your touchstones change, people age, and like you see kids and they grow up, and you're like, how did you get here? How did you get so big? And then sometimes you don't even realize how much you've aged and changed until you go back. And the thing is, there's this thing, and I think it's particular for North America, when you go back home, like, again, to the Caribbean where I'm from. I had that same experience when I first went back home to Barbados. It was very surreal going back and seeing how the country changed. But then people still expect you to be the same but different. And when I say different, like she kind of has this experience where people think she's more successful than she actually is. You know, they think she has more money than she actually has. And a lot of people think that's because like when you come to North America, things are so much easier. I'm like, things are actually harder because you're building your life from scratch again, and the economy is different. Finding jobs is hard, especially in particular fields. So like getting and then leveling up in that within that job, whatever it is, can be harder because you have a whole completely different thing. So like that's something she goes through.
Yeah, and especially with social media, you're only seeing highlights of their lives. And recently, my mom and grandma came for the premiere, and then my mom told me how like, oh, I need to post it on Facebook because your cousin told me that I'm so inspired by Mayumi. Every time I see her Facebook update, I'm like, oh, I need to work harder. And I'm like, oh no.
Please don't. You're like, please don't stress yourself out.
Really seeing like the tiny part of the highlight of my career but you know he doesn't know all the meetings and all the unsuccessful drafts and all these things that goes in between those months that I'm not updating. And of course, so the people who's receiving that highlight end is like, oh wow, they must be doing so great. So they have no idea. And so it's like you're living up to that expectation when you go back versus, you know, in real life, you're like, no, I've gained this much weight. I have da 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 da. Like, you know, all these things are real. And it's a very specific feeling when you go back and you're kind of pulled into this like, do I play the part or do I be real? And yeah.
Yeah, and I made a decision when I go back home. I don't play the part. I believe that tell people, listen, I have bills to pay the same way as you do, and I probably even have more bills to pay because like here we got heating, AC. We got to worry about winter clothing for 4 seasons. We're back home like in Caribbean. We have one set of clothing. Everything is summer wear. But I also people like, please don't measure yourself by what you see because you don't like just strive for your own brand of success. You know, everyone's success is different. And again, that's another conversation that's had in the film in different levels between the characters. It happens again between Hero. It happens with her mom. The conversation with her mom in the kitchen where her mom is like, my version of success is being able to support my friends, going to like a bazaar and setting up a stall, you know. Grandma's version of success was like, I make life the way I make what I can of the life I have, you know, and not begging for affection from a man she knows that she might never get. She's like, you know what? It is what it is. I'll make the best of it. And I have my kids here. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And so the film is very much a lot. And I kind of was going to ask you this, because the title of the film is Akashi, and like is it Hanji, right? The spelling of it in Japanese, that version of Akashi means proof. You know, it has proof, and then one of the phrases that I saw, it was like proof of truth. And so I wanted to ask you, because I kind of saw that's what the film is about, you know, everyone's version of truth. What is your truth to you? What is your version of success? And like, I don't have anything to prove because I'm just trying to like, you know, I shouldn't have to prove anything to anyone. So talk to me a bit about the title of the film in that way.
Yeah, I love hearing like your interpretation. I love hearing a lot of other people's interpretation of like what Akashi meaning proof. I think it's all is true what you mentioned. Like it is proof of different shapes of love, and kind of asking herself that question too. And it's also like this film is proof that all of this exists, and also the consequence of making choices in life versus not. Like, you know, it's very meta to say that this film is the proof, but yeah, I kind of wanted it to be have that sort of open interpretation because this film is about a lot of things. And I sort of wanted the audience to take away whatever that title would mean to them by watching this film. And there's also like other reasons of other minute reasons of, okay, I want this also to be a proof for me personally as Mayumi Yoshida that this is my calling card movie. Like Akashi is me. As in not, Kana isn't me, but the whole film has been my life for like the last 9 years. And so I wanted that to be like, okay, well, this is proof of me as a filmmaker, as an artist. And also, it's really so silly, but the capital A as your title is a really good way to catch people's eyes. Like whenever when we got the telefilm funding announcement, we were the first, obviously because it's in alphabetical order,
Yeah.
first in line, and like it's so silly, but that was also one of the
It's really
things.
cute, actually.
It's kind of one of the things to just consider. And also another thought thing I considered is like, what is a word that is easy to say in any language? So I kind of like wanted to make sure that it was easy for English speakers, Japanese speakers, like any, so that it's a little bit more easier on the mouth, in the tongue. So yeah, myriad of reasons.
Mary, I love that, right? I love that you're like, you know what? Let me go with a film that not only is meta, but like it's a capital H, so it'll be at the top of the sheet, the film screen,
Yeah.
the film list. I didn't get that completely. I'm like, that makes so much sense to me just from a logistical point. You're like, let me be practical about this as well. Anytime anyone opens a film magazine, Akashi's right there at the top, and ABCDFGHIJ. K is kind of like in the middle, and there aren't many words that have like other letters after A, like most of them come after. So that makes sense perfectly. We have time for one last question. So the last question I want to talk, and I think, and I'm so curious about it because in hearing you talk about, like time stops and like, like how we move forward, but we don't when we move away. The choice of filming of this film being in black and white for the majority of it, but only kind of like being in color in the beginning and the middle, little scenes in the middle, and then the end. I kind of saw that. I thought it was really interesting that the past scenes are in color, whereas the present scenes are in black and white. And I was so curious about that because, again, usually in most films, when you do like flashbacks, the flashbacks are like in black and white or sepia or like not intense color.
Yeah.
But for this film, you chose like a lot of the flashback scenes to be in very intense, bright colors. And I wanted to ask you about that because I kind of saw it as like the present scenes are in black and white because Kana, she's kind of like in this liminal space in her relationship with her families and in her life, where nothing is, she doesn't feel intense about anything. Not even the advertisement at her family, her friends are all like, this is amazing. She's like, she doesn't really have any strong feelings about it. So everything for her is kind of blah. Whereas like the past is brightly colored because she's so curious about it. She's so curious about this life that her grandfather had, her grandmother had. And then it all just comes to bright full color at the end with Hero when she gets this revelation. She's like, you know what? I can't make my life what I want it to be. So talk to me about the choice for like having the film be colored this way.
Yeah. I love your interpretation. I'm someone that welcomes like the audience's interpretation is the correct one because it's your film now. I love that it's yours just as well as it's mine. My interpretation or my intention, and it's totally okay that it's not something that resonates. I'm totally okay with that. My initial thought was that I wanted to revisit the past, these like, memories of the lovers through the grandfather's lens. It must have been a very the most vivid time of like the most romantic time in his life. And if we saw this love affair through his lens, how would we feel about the relationship? It's a taboo relationship. It's a love affair. So, you shouldn't feel romantic about it, but because of the circumstances, they were kind of put into that situation. And eventually, like the grandpa kind of ends that. But I wanted to sort of like throw that question to the audience by giving that experience of how they must have felt in that moment and making it extra romantic and vibey and very like yearning. And in contrast to that, with present time, I wanted to go black and white because I wanted to feel that difference between back in the days and now. But also for Kana's journey, she's going through, I think, a very modern day struggle. And I find myself being quite judgmental towards modern day struggles. And I sort of like, whether it's a rom-com or like, even if it's coming of age drama, maybe I'm a little bit more harsher on what is happening right now versus like I sort of wanted to feel Kana's struggle as a timeless struggle, which I think it is. Even if you watch this 10 years later, I think there's going to be parts of you or people who will relate to what Kana is going through about like soul searching and like where does she belong and her struggle with her career and love. And I wanted to sort of remove that judgmental eyes from this. And to do that, I wanted to give like kind of take away the sense of time. And so I almost wanted to turn it into more of a classical feel like Frances Ha or Annie Hall or like it is like a coming of age love story, but because we're removing the colors, maybe we can really focus on the essential story and the struggle rather than sort of putting our lens or our judgment towards the character. So yeah, I sort of wanted that like stripped, like yeah, timeless feel. And then another part is I wanted to sort of create a separation between me, Mayumi Yoshida, as a writer director, and Kana, so that Kana is sort of in this black and white world where I feel that separation. So that kind of gives me that safety net as a creator. Um, but also I could, and like in the edit, I would kind of give my to this actor notes and like I think we could cut that and like I wonder, you know what, I loved her expression in there. Like I would say that about myself because I had that separation. And that was really helpful as a writer, director, actor on your own movie. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but I now love that we chose black and white because I think another reason was when we were developing this, it was starting to feel like there's a lot more like coming of age identity stories from our diaspora, which was amazing. And I think I really owe my career to the movement of the time, how we have now we are able to appreciate more of our culture in the mainstream, media. But I also realized that like how can Akashi be its own unique thing and not get lost in the pool of those stories? Every story is different, but how can I make it visually unique for my own? And so that was a question that I was like challenging myself as well earlier on in development. And then those ideas kind of came up, and I felt like it made sense to me.
And it does. And the thing what I love about this film being mostly in black and white is again is like not only is it because it's about a young woman, but it's a film again directed and written by a young woman like yourself. And we don't get many black and white films made by female filmmakers, for let alone one as young as you, and telling these kind of stories. But the other thing I love about it being in black and white because because it's filmed in Japan and in Tokyo. When you watch old school Japanese films, there's a very particular quality that you get from it being in black and white, and a lot of it has again to do with the setting, with how like the homes in Japan are built and the streets are like there's a very particular feel it has, and your film has that, and it kind of and it made me think that there's a film that I saw last year for the Japan Shorts in Asia Japan Film Festival. There was a short film that was made in black and white, and the filmmaker kind of had the same idea that you had with regards to making it in black and white, because the film is about generations, the older generation versus the younger generation, and the way how he kind of played with the black and white kind of works the same way you did, because like the older generation actually dressed younger than the younger generation dressed older, and I like that, like how your interpretation of black and white kind of like coalesces with that, because it to me is just like showing like young filmmakers do have kind of like older sensibility with regards to film. love that. And when I
Yeah.
say older, I mean with regards to like just having a ability to say, I can see this as something, how it would look in 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
Instead of just virtually appealing just to audiences now. You're thinking like 20, 30 years down the road. And I love that. And we have to wrap now. But again, thank you so much, Mayumi, for talking with me. And congratulations to you, the cast, the crew, everyone. I wish we had more time to talk about the casting because you made some interesting casting choices. But thank you again.
Thank you so much, Carol. This was so fun. You're amazing. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're amazing too. And I hope we get to see each other at Real Asian here
Yeah.
in November. So congratulations to that again. And again, the screening for that will be November 9th. So I'll publish just before then. And of course, be promoting it on social media.
Thank you. I hope I see you at the theater. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.